It's been 25 years since the Premier League was first created. Back in 1992, the old First Division was scrapped after 104 years and a breakaway league was formed in time for the 92-93 campaign, with 22 teams ready to do battle. News Group Newspapers Limited. Man United won the inaugural Premier League title in 1992-93. Chelsea won the most recent Premier League title in 2016-17. Of course, football has changed dramatically since then, as the role of money and business in the beautiful game has taken a tighter grip. It's not just the whopping transfer fees, sky-high wages and sponsorship deals though. The grounds fans came to love have been modified, streamlined, improved and in some cases totally destroyed and rebuilt from the rubble. Some clubs, including West Ham most recently, have relocated altogether as they waved goodbye to Upton Park and moved across East London to the London Stadium. They're not the only ones to seek pastures greener though, as Arsenal bid Highbury farewell and moved to the Emirates Stadium. But just how have the current 20 Premier League clubs' grounds changed in the past 25 years? Find out below. Hammers released video of plans for their new home Arsenal. Arsenal's Highbury was a very different place in the 1992-93 season. The Emirates is a completely different stadium to Highbury stadiums. Highbury, Emirates capacity 1,992 to 38,419, capacity 2017 to 60,432. Incredibly, for the opening day of the 1992-93 season, fans at Highbury were greeted by a mural where the old North Bank terrace once stood. It depicted the soon-to-be-built new two-tier stand. Clearly the players were stunned too, losing 4-2 at the hands of Norwich. Arsenal of course shipped off to the Emirates Stadium in 2006 in order to find room for more fans, with Highbury far too cramped amongst housing to build on. Bournemouth's Dean Court home back in 1992. Dean Court, now known as the Vitality Stadium, is still the smallest in the Premier League stadiums. Dean Court capacity 1,992 to 10,000, approximately, capacity 2017 to 11,464. Back in 1992, the Cherries were loitering down in the third tier, playing at a tiny ground comprised mostly of terracing. Just the one, compact stand stood at Dean Court, now known as the Vitality Stadium, of course. While still standing on the same soil, the ground was entirely rebuilt in 2001, with a pitch even rotated 90 degrees. While the ground remains small, arguably too much so for a Premier League team, it is a huge improvement on the original. Brighton played their games at the Goldstone Ground back in 1992. Brighton and Hove Albion now play their home games at the Amex Stadium. Goldstone Ground, with Dean Stadium, Amex Stadium capacity 1,992 to 36,747, record attendance, capacity 2017 to 30,750. Famously the stadium in which David Beckham made his Manchester United debut in 1992. The Goldstone Ground isn't all that well known. The Seagulls were in the third tier for the 1992-93 season, with top-flight football a mere pipe dream at that stage. Money troubles meant the stadium was sold in 1997, with no new home lined up. A move to the Dean Stadium, originally an athletics venue, and a ground share with Gillingham finally led to a move to the Farmer Stadium, now the Amex, in 2011. The 30,750-seater ground will see its first ever taste of Premier League action in 2017-18, a far cry from 1992's Goldstone Ground. Burnley have always used the Turf Moor Stadium as their home. Since the 19th century, Turf Moor has always been the home of Burnley FC, but has undergone major changes over the years. Stadiums. Turf Moor capacity 1,992 to 21,401, capacity 2017 to 21,401. The Clarets have lived and played at Turf Moor ever since 1883. When the Premier League was born in 1992, the ground was dominated by terracing. But fast forward 25 years and the stadium is a different animal, fully seated thanks to the old terraces being converted in the mid-90s. Chelsea Stamford Bridge looked very different 25 years ago in the 1992-93 season. The home of Chelsea FC, Stamford Bridge as it looks in the present-day stadiums. Stamford Bridge capacity 1,992 to 30,000, approximately, capacity 2017 to 41,663. All change, please. Back in 1992, Stamford Bridge, the very same ground the Blues play at today, was an entirely different entity. The West London Stadium then boasted just one stand, the three-tier East Stand, with sweeping bowl terracing covering three-quarters of the ground. But following substantial work in the 90s Chelsea now show off a four-stand, all-seater 40,000-seater stadium, with plans for even more work. Crystal Palace Selhurst Park, then home of Crystal Palace and Wimbledon. Back in 1992, how Selhurst Park looked ahead of the 2017-18 season stadiums. Selhurst Park capacity 1,992 to 20,000, approximately, capacity 2017 to 25,456. The Eagles played out a stunning 3-3 draw with Blackburn on the opening day of the season at home, with Rovers' new signing Alan Shearer scoring twice. Palace netted a last-minute equaliser to thrill home fans, many of whom stood in the open terracing at the Holmesdale Road end. That was replaced in 1994-95 with a two-tier stand, with the other end, White Horse Lane, was roofed and made an all-seater in 1993. Everton Goodison Park, home of Everton, circa the 1992-93 season. Goodison Park, home of Everton, as it looks today in the 21st century stadiums. Goodison Park capacity 1,992 to 40,157, capacity 2017 to 40,157. Since leaving Anfield, yes, at Anfield, in 1892, Goodison Park has been Everton's home. In truth, little has changed at the old ground since the Premier League was formed in 1992. In fact, only the new Park End stand being built and the transition away from terraces show any difference. Two stands, built in the 1920s and 1930s, are still standing today, but may not for much longer, as the Toffees continue their quest for a new ground. Huddersfield played their games at Leeds Road back in the 1992-93 season. Huddersfield Town now play their games at the John Smith Stadium. Stadiums: Leeds Road, John Smith Stadium, capacity 1,992 to 16,195, capacity 2017 to 24,500. Back in 1992, Huddersfield were plying their trade down in the third tier of English football at Leeds Road, their home since 1908. For the Prem's first year, the capacity was just over 16,000 despite boasting a large popular side terrace. In the present day, Town play at the John Smith Stadium, a 24,500-seater stadium and home since 1994. However, for the first game, that summer, two stands were incomplete and took around 4 years to finally be finished. Leicester City played their home games at Filbert Street during the early 90s. Leicester City now turn out at the King Power Stadium. Stadiums: Filbert Street, King Power Stadium, capacity 1,992 to 22,000, capacity 2017 to 32,312. The Foxes spent over a century at Filbert Street, having played their first game there in 1891. In 1992, it was a somewhat disjointed stadium, with a two-tier south stand that towered over the east and north stands. Elsewhere, the main stand was rebuilt in the Premier League year 1992-93, before the move to the Walkers Stadium, now the King Power Stadium, in 2002. Liverpool Anfield hasn't changed too much in the past 25 years. Since the 1992-93 season, Anfield, home of Liverpool, is roughly 10,000 seats larger in the present day compared to 1992 stadiums. Anfield capacity 1,992 to 45,362, capacity 2017 to 54,074. Celebrating their 100th birthday in 1992, the Reds opened up the centenary stand next to the famous Kop. Due to safety restrictions, the terraced area had its capacity cut from 30,000 at its peak to 15,000, with the Main and Anfield Road stands already all-seater. For years Liverpool loitered around the 45,000-seater mark, after the old Kop was demolished in 1994 and replaced by a 12,390 all-seated stand. A huge main stand opened in 2016, boosting the tally to 54,074. Manchester City's old home, Main Road, was one of the biggest stadia of the time. Manchester City now play their home games at the old Commonwealth Games Stadium, now called the Etihad Stadium's Main Road. Etihad capacity 1,992 to 35,150, capacity 2017 to 55,097. Long before the mega money modern days at the Etihad, City played their games down at Main Road. It was once the largest stadium in England, but by the early 90s, when the Premier League was born, it was showing its age. The Platt End was rebuilt during the debut year, but its days were clearly numbered. The club took the City of Manchester Stadium, the home of the 2002 Commonwealth Games, and renamed it, in the place they now call home. Manchester United Old Trafford, home of Manchester United. As it looked in the early 90s, our Old Trafford has significantly improved over the past 25 years, now seating around 75,000 fans. Stadiums. Our Old Trafford capacity 1,992 to 44,000, capacity 2017 to 75,643. Old Trafford had been developed with a long-term plan already in mind come the 1992-93 season. That allowed United to regularly and seamlessly add to stands or rebuild entirely, with the Stretford End terrace being torn down in 1992 the only real disruption. It was rebuilt to boost the capacity from 32,000 to 44,000 for the campaign, before two new tiers added to the North Stand in 1996 took that figure up to 55,000. The East Stand and Stretford End received an extra tier 2 over the next 2 decades, taking the total to 68,217, before more and more quadrants had tiers added. The total capacity is now over 75,000 in the red half of Manchester. Newcastle St James Park has always been one of English football's iconic stadiums. Home of Newcastle, St James Park is now one of the biggest in the Premier League stadiums. St James Park capacity 1,992 to 36,000, capacity 2017 to 52,354. Plying their trade in the second tier in 1992-93, St James Park has changed a fair bit over the years. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, stood 2 stands and 2 uncovered terraces, at either end. Since then, the Milburn Stand is now a giant 3-tier structure, with the Leazes End and Gallowgate End standing tall. The capacity has increased by around 50% since the Premier League's inception to stand as one of the top flight's biggest, and most spectacular. Southampton used to play their home Premier League games at the Dell. Southampton now play their home games at St Mary's Stadium. Stadiums. The Dell, St Mary's Stadium capacity 1,992 to 15,200, capacity 2017 to 32,505. Outdated, cramped, adored. 3 words many of the Southampton faithful would use to describe the Dell. Holding a touch over 15,000 fans, the ground included the famous Mailton Road End, a 2-tiered, oddly shaped tapered stand, due to the road immediately behind it. That was levelled out in 1994, but Saints moved on to pastures new in 2001, to their fresh 32,505-seater St Mary's home. Stoke City used to play at the Victoria Ground back in the 1992-93 season. Stoke City now turn out at the Bet365 Stadium, formerly known as the Britannia Stadium. Stadiums. Victoria Ground, Bet365 Stadium, capacity 1,992 to 25,000, capacity 2017 to 27,902. 25 years ago, Stoke were playing their football at the Victoria Ground, about to embark on a promotion campaign. A classic stadium, it comprised of a blend of 4 distinctive stands, both seated and terraced. During the era of terracing becoming a lost art, Stoke opted to move home entirely, to the Britannia Stadium, now known as the Bet365 Stadium. In February of this year, they added 1,800 seats to the ground, filling a gap in the southeast corner. Swansea Vetchfield used to play host to Swansea City in the early 90s. Swansea City now play their home games at the Liberty Stadium. Stadiums: Vetchfield, Liberty Stadium, capacity 1,992 to 11,475, capacity 2017 to 21,088. Something of a Cinderella story, Swansea were languishing in the third tier of English football in 1992, playing at Vetchfield. The club worked tirelessly to improve the capacity of the stadium, but objections from local residents put all work on the shelf. Financial worries also meant subsequent works were canned, before the Swans moved to the comparatively plush, 21,000-seater Liberty Stadium in 2005. Tottenham home of Tottenham Hotspur, White Hart Lane. Looked back in the 1992-93 season, White Hart Lane is in the process of being demolished to make room for a brand new stadium. Stadiums: White Hart Lane, capacity 1,992 to 36,284, capacity 2017 to 61,000. Expected: Spurs' old home underwent a host of renovation back in the late 1980s, meaning it was a fairly large stadium for the Premier League's birth at over 36,000 capacity. However, there was controversy owing to the dated and frustrating pillars blocking the view of the pitch. The addition of executive boxes also caused outcry as it removed the much-loved shelf terrace. In the modern day, Tottenham are in the process of knocking down White Hart Lane in order to make way for their new stadium, set to open for the 2018-19 season. They'll play at Wembley during the 2017-18 campaign. Watford News Group Newspapers Limited. Vicarage Road was a very different place back in the 1992-93 season for Watford. Watford's home, Vicarage Road, has undergone extensive work in the past 25 years. Stadiums: Vicarage Road, capacity 1,992 to 15,000, approximately, capacity 2017 to 23,700. A fair amount has changed at Watford over the years. Back in 1992, the Hornets were playing in the second tier in a ground utterly dominated by terracing, Rouse Stand aside. That stand was only opened in 1986, with help from famous fan Elton John. While the Rouse Stand remains, Watford have added more and more over the years as they now hold close to 24,000 at the modern-day stadium. West Brom have played their home games at the Hawthorns since 1900. Stadiums: the Hawthorns, capacity 1,992 to 26,850, capacity 2017 to 26,850. The Baggies' home since 1990. The Hawthorns was another dominated by terracing in 1992. But now, West Brom's ground is a smart all-seater stadium with a respectable capacity of nearly 27,000. The all-seater stands were installed in 1994, with the Rainbow Stand replaced by a new East Stand in 2001, with a Halford Lane stand also refurbished. West Ham played at Upton Park, also known as the Berlin Ground, until the start of the 2016-17 season. The Hammers now play at the former Olympic Stadium, known as the London Stadium. Stadiums: Upton Park, London Stadium, capacity 1,992 to 35,016, capacity 2017 to 57,000. In English football's second tier for the Premier League's first season, West Ham did gain promotion that season.